This is a fictional romantic story, created for entertainment purposes only. I sent him a text I can't take back. 3 words to the wrong man. The most dangerous man in Chicago. And now he's standing at my door, rain dripping from his jaw, looking at me like I'm the only thing keeping him alive, whispering 3 words that will shatter every wall I've built. Say it again. Before we dive into this story, I need your help. We're building something special here, working toward our first 1,000 subscribers, and every single one of you matters. Hit that subscribe button if you believe that love doesn't follow rules, that sometimes the most dangerous choice is also the most beautiful one. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're listening from, because knowing this story is reaching hearts everywhere makes every word worth writing. Now, let me tell you exactly what happened the night I accidentally told Dante Valentino I missed him. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. It hammered against the windows of my small apartment in Lincoln Park, a relentless drumming that matched the chaos inside my head. I sat curled on my worn leather couch, a glass of red wine balanced on my knee, my phone clutched in my other hand like a lifeline. I'd been scrolling through old photos. A mistake, I know. The kind of self-destructive behavior my therapist would have plenty to say about if I ever worked up the courage to tell her the truth about the man I'd left behind. 8 months. 8 months since I'd walked away from Dante Valentino. 8 months of trying to convince myself I'd made the right choice. 8 months of waking up reaching for someone who wasn't there. My best friend Mia had texted earlier, checking in from her new life in Seattle. She'd moved there for a job opportunity, leaving me alone in a city that suddenly felt too big and too empty. I meant to text her back, to tell her I missed her, to bridge the distance that had grown between us since she'd left. But my thumb slipped. Or maybe my heart betrayed me. Maybe somewhere deep down, I knew exactly what I was doing when I pressed send on those 3 devastating words. I miss you. The message sat there, glowing accusingly beneath the wrong name. Not Mia Chen. Not my best friend 3,000 miles away. Dante Valentino. The man I'd spent 8 months trying to forget. The man whose hands had mapped every inch of my skin. The man whose dark past had finally become too heavy for me to carry alongside my own dreams of a simple, safe life. My wine glass slipped from my nerveless fingers, spilling crimson across the cream carpet like a wound. I barely noticed. My eyes were fixed on the screen, watching those 3 dots appear. He was typing. My heart stopped, then started again, racing so fast I felt dizzy. The dots disappeared, my breath caught, they reappeared. Then, finally, 2 words that made the world tilt beneath me. Don't move. I stared at the message, trying to make sense of it. Don't move. What did that mean? He couldn't possibly. Another message appeared. I'm already here. The knock came before I could process the words. 3 sharp raps against my door, deliberate and unmistakable. I knew that knock. I'd heard it in my dreams for 8 months, followed by the ghost of his voice, the phantom of his touch. I stood on shaking legs, my bare feet cold against the hardwood floor. The spilled wine forgotten. The storm outside forgotten. Everything forgotten except the man waiting on the other side of that door. My hand trembled as I reached for the handle. I could see his silhouette through the frosted glass panel, tall and broad and perfectly still, waiting with the patience of a predator who knew his prey had nowhere to run. I opened the door, and Dante Valentino stole the breath from my lungs all over again. He stood in my narrow hallway, rain dripping from his dark hair, his charcoal coat soaked through. He looked like he'd walked through the storm to get here, like nothing as trivial as weather could stop him. The sharp lines of his face were harder than I remembered, his jaw shadowed with stubble, his cheekbones more pronounced. As if the months apart had carved away something soft, leaving only the dangerous edges behind. But his eyes, those impossible gray eyes that could turn to steel in an instant, were fixed on me with an intensity that made my knees threaten to buckle. They traveled over my face like he was memorizing me, cataloging every detail, searching for something. Dante, I whispered, and his name tasted like coming home. He didn't speak, didn't move. just stood there, rain pooling at his feet, watching me with that devastating focus that had always made me feel like I was the only person in the entire world. The silence stretched between us, heavy with everything we'd left unsaid. 8 months of distance, 8 months of silence, all of it crumbling under the weight of 3 accidental words. Finally, he spoke, and his voice was rougher than I remembered, scraped raw by something I couldn't name. Say it again. The command, because it was a command, despite the softness of his tone, sent shivers down my spine. It was a mistake, I managed, though the words came out breathless and unconvincing. The message, it wasn't meant for you. I was trying to text my friend. Liar. The word was gentle, almost tender, but it cut through my excuse like a blade. He took a single step forward, and I instinctively stepped back. He followed, crossing my threshold, the door swinging shut behind him with a soft click that echoed like a gunshot in the quiet apartment. He stopped inches from me, close enough that I could smell the rain on his skin, the familiar scent of sandalwood and something darker, more dangerous. Close enough that I could see the muscle jumping in his jaw, the storm brewing in those gray eyes. I know when you're lying, Elena, he said quietly. I've always known. Your left hand twitches, your eyes drop to my mouth, you bite the inside of your cheek. His hand came up slowly, giving me time to pull away. I didn't. His thumb traced my lower lip, and I couldn't suppress the small gasp that escaped me. You're doing all 3 right now. I closed my eyes, overwhelmed by his proximity, by the truth I couldn't hide from him. I'd never been able to hide from him. Say it again, he repeated, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Look at me and say it again. I opened my eyes, met his gaze, and let the last of my resistance crumble. I miss you, I whispered. I've missed you every single day, Dante. I've missed you so much it feels like I can't breathe sometimes. Something fractured in his expression. The control he wore like armor cracked, revealing the raw emotion beneath. His forehead dropped to rest against mine, and I felt the tremor that ran through his powerful frame. 8 months, he said, his voice rough. 8 months, Elena. Do you have any idea what that was like, knowing you were out here so close and I couldn't? He stopped, swallowing hard. Why didn't you come? I asked, tears burning my eyes. If you miss me too, why didn't you come? Because you asked me not to. His hands framed my face, thumbs brushing away the tears that had started to fall. You said you couldn't live in my world anymore. You said loving me was destroying you, and I... His voice broke slightly. I loved you too much to keep destroying you. The sob that escaped me was ugly and raw. I was wrong. I was scared and overwhelmed, and I handled it badly. But I was so wrong, Dante. Being without you was worse than anything your world could throw at me. He pulled me into his arms then, crushing me against his chest, one hand cradling the back of my head while the other wrapped around my waist. I buried my face in his rain-soaked coat and cried, for the months we'd lost, for the fear that had driven me away, for the stubborn pride that had kept us both silent. I'm not letting you go again, he murmured against my hair. I don't care if that makes me selfish. I don't care if your world and my world don't fit together perfectly. We'll make them fit. We'll figure it out. But I'm not spending another day without you, Elena. I can't. I pulled back to look at him, seeing my own desperate relief reflected in his eyes. Then don't. Stay. Please, Dante, just stay. His answer was in his kiss, deep and desperate and tasting of rainwater and redemption. His hands slid into my hair as he backed me against the wall, his body pressing into mine with a possessiveness that should have scared me, but instead made me feel complete. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine in that gesture that had always been ours. I'm here, he promised. I'm not going anywhere, not unless you tell me to go, and even then I might not listen. I laughed. The sound watery but real. I'm not telling you to go, not ever again. Good. He kissed me softly, then pulled back with a small smile that transformed his entire face. Because I already told my driver to leave. I'd have to call him back, and he's probably halfway to the lake by now. I laughed again, and the sound seemed to ease something in his expression. He tucked a strand of damp hair behind my ear, his touch impossibly gentle. "You're soaked," I said, suddenly aware of the rain still dripping from his clothes. "You need to get out of those wet things." One dark eyebrow arched. "Is that an invitation, Ms. Russo?" My cheeks flushed, but I held his gaze. "Maybe it is. We have 8 months to make up for." His eyes darkened, and the temperature in the room seemed to spike. "We do, but first—" He pulled back slightly, his expression growing serious. "There are things we need to discuss, things about my world that have changed since you left, things you need to know before we go any further." The warmth in my chest cooled slightly. "What things?" "Not tonight." He shook his head, pulling me back into his arms. "Tonight, I just want to hold you. I want to fall asleep with you in my arms and wake up knowing you're real. Tomorrow, we talk. Tomorrow, I tell you everything. But tonight—" His voice dropped to a whisper. "Tonight, let me just have this." I understood. After 8 months of emptiness, we both needed this moment of simple reconnection before facing whatever complications awaited us. "Okay," I agreed. "Tonight we just have this." I woke to sunlight streaming through my bedroom window and the unfamiliar sensation of warmth at my back. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming again. The same dream I'd had countless times over the past 8 months, Dante's arms around me, his breath warm against my neck, his heart beating steady against my spine. But this wasn't a dream. The arm draped over my waist was real, heavy and solid. The chest pressed against my back was real. The soft sound of breathing behind me was real. Dante was here, in my bed. After 8 months of silence, he was actually here. I turned carefully, not wanting to wake him, and found his gray eyes already open, watching me with that quiet intensity that still made my stomach flutter. "Morning," he murmured, his voice rough with sleep. "Morning," I whispered back. "How long have you been awake?" "A while." His hand came up to trace the line of my jaw. "I forgot how beautiful you are when you sleep. I didn't want to miss a moment of it." My heart clenched at the vulnerability in his words. This man, this powerful, dangerous man who commanded respect and fear in equal measure, was looking at me like I was something precious, something he was terrified of losing again. "I'm not going anywhere," I promised, echoing his words from the night before. "Neither am I," he kissed me softly, then pulled back with a small sigh. "But I meant what I said last night. We need to talk." I sat up, pulling the sheet around me. The morning light was harsh, illuminating the lines of tension around his eyes that I hadn't noticed in the darkness. "What's happened?" He sat up too, running a hand through his disheveled dark hair. In the daylight, I could see him more clearly. The new scar on his collarbone that disappeared beneath the sheet, the slight hollowness in his cheeks that spoke of sleepless nights and missed meals. "Things have escalated since you left," he said carefully. "The Marchetti family, you remember them." I nodded, a cold knot forming in my stomach. The Marchettis were the Valentinos' main rivals in Chicago's underworld. I'd heard Dante mention them before, always with a tension in his voice that made me uneasy. "They made a move about 6 months ago, tried to take over some of our operations on the south side. People got hurt." His jaw tightened. "Good people, people who worked for me." "I'm sorry," I said softly, reaching for his hand. He took it, his fingers intertwining with mine. "We pushed back, hard. Things have been tense ever since. There's a fragile truce right now, but—" He looked at me, and I saw the fear beneath his control. "But if they find out about you, Elena, they could use you to get to me. You'd be a target." The words hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. "Is that why you stayed away?" I asked. "Not just because I asked you to, but because you were trying to protect me." "Both," he admitted. "Losing you nearly killed me, but at least you were safe. At least I knew you were out here, living your life away from all of it." I processed this, the weight of what he was saying settling over me. This wasn't just about rekindling a romance. This was about choosing to step back into a world where danger was real and consequences were permanent. "And now," I asked, "what's changed?" "Now," He brought my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles. Now I've realized that keeping you at a distance doesn't keep you safe. It just keeps us both miserable. So I'm done pretending I can stay away. I'm done trying to protect you by losing you. His gray eyes met mine, fierce and determined. I want you in my life, Elena, all the way in, but I need you to understand what that means. I held his gaze, my decision crystallizing. I understand. Do you? He searched my face. This isn't like before. Before, you were on the edges of my world. If we do this again, you'll be at the center of it. People will know who you are, what you mean to me. That comes with risks. I know. I squeezed his hand. I've had 8 months to think about it, Dante. 8 months of safety and normalcy and absolute misery. And you know what I realized? What? That safe isn't the same as happy. That normal means nothing if you're not there to share it with. I leaned forward, pressing my forehead against his. I choose you. I choose this, whatever comes with it. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then his arms came around me, pulling me onto his lap, holding me so tight I could barely breathe. I don't deserve you, he murmured against my neck. Probably not, I agreed, and felt his chest shake with surprised laughter. But you've got me anyway. A week later, I met his family. Well, not his whole family. Just Marco, his younger brother and the person Dante trusted most in the world. Marco was in charge of the security operations for the Valentino family, which meant he was also the person who would be in charge of keeping me safe. Dante had warned me about Marco ahead of time. He's protective, he'd said, with a note of amusement in his voice. Protective of me specifically. He wasn't happy when you left, blamed himself for not seeing it coming. Why would he blame himself? Because he's Marco. He blames himself for everything. The man who opened the door of Dante's penthouse didn't look like someone who carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. He looked like a slightly younger, slightly softer version of Dante. The same dark hair, the same strong jaw, but with warmer brown eyes and an easier smile. That smile widened when he saw me. So, you're the one who brought him back from the dead, Marco said, pulling me into a hug before I could react. Thank God. I was running out of ways to make him eat actual food instead of just coffee and whiskey. Marco, Dante warned from behind me, but there was no real heat in his voice. What? It's true. Marco released me, but kept his hands on my shoulders, studying my face. He was a disaster without you, Elena. An actual, literal disaster. I've never seen him so. That's enough, Dante said, but he was almost smiling. She doesn't need to hear about my suffering. Actually, I said, grinning, I think I'd like to hear more. Marco laughed, a bright, genuine sound that immediately put me at ease. I like her. I always liked her, but I like her even more now. He led us into the penthouse, and I took in my surroundings. Dante's home was exactly what I remembered, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago skyline, sleek modern furniture, everything precisely organized. But there were small changes. A throw blanket on the couch that looked soft and inviting. A stack of books on the coffee table that hadn't been there before. Signs of life in a space that had always felt more like a magazine spread than a home. You've changed things, I said, running my hand over the blanket. Dante came up behind me, his hands settling on my waist. I was trying to make it feel less empty. Did it work? No, he pressed a kiss to my temple. Nothing worked until now. Marco cleared his throat pointedly. As much as I love watching you two be disgustingly adorable, we have some things to discuss. We settled on the couches, and the atmosphere shifted. Marco's easy smile faded, replaced by a seriousness that reminded me exactly who these men were and what they did. Dante told you about the Marchettis, Marco said. It wasn't a question. I nodded. He told me things have been tense. Tense is an understatement. Marco leaned forward, elbows on his knees. 6 months ago, they killed 3 of our people, good men with families. We responded in kind, and now we're in a cold war. Neither side wants to make the first move, but neither side is backing down. And I'm a liability, I said quietly. No, Dante's voice was sharp. You're not a liability, you're a consideration, there's a difference. Marco nodded. What my brother is trying to say is that your safety is now our top priority, which means some changes are going to be necessary. I listened as he outlined the security measures they'd put in place. A driver who would take me to and from work. A security team that would monitor my apartment building. Regular check-ins, emergency protocols. It should have felt suffocating. A few months ago, it probably would have. But sitting there, with Dante's hand warm in mine and Marco's earnest concern evident in every word, I felt something different. Protected, valued, loved. Okay, I said when Marco finished. I can do all of that. Both brothers looked surprised. That's it, Marco asked. No arguments. Should there be? Last time, you said all of this made you feel like a prisoner, Dante said carefully. I turned to look at him, seeing the vulnerability beneath the careful neutrality of his expression. Last time, I didn't understand that this was how you showed love. I thought you were trying to control me. I didn't realize you were trying to protect me. His hand tightened on mine. And now? Now I understand. I lifted our joined hands, pressing a kiss to his knuckles. And I'm not running away from it anymore. Something flickered in his gray eyes, relief and gratitude and love all tangled together. He pulled me close, pressing a kiss to my hair. I'm going to go pretend to do something useful in the other room, Marco announced, standing. You two are making me nauseous. I laughed, but Dante didn't let me go. Thank you, he murmured against my hair, for understanding, for staying. Thank you for coming back, I whispered, for not giving up on us. 3 weeks of happiness. That's what we got before reality came crashing back in. 3 weeks of falling into a new routine. 3 weeks of dinners together and lazy Sunday mornings and learning each other again. 3 weeks of almost forgetting the danger that lurked just outside our bubble of renewed love. The reminder came on a Tuesday evening. I was leaving work, a small marketing firm in the Loop, where I'd taken a job after leaving my previous position at a company that did business with the Valentinos, when I noticed the car. A black sedan parked across the street. Nothing unusual about that in Chicago, but something about the way it sat there, engine running, made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I pulled out my phone, ready to call Dante, when someone stepped into my path. Elena Russo. The man was tall, dark-haired, with cold eyes and a smile that didn't reach them. I'd never seen him before, but I knew immediately what he was, who he worked for. I think you have me confused with someone else, I said, proud that my voice didn't shake. I don't think I do. He stepped closer, and I took an instinctive step back. You're Dante Valentino's woman. Everyone knows it. He's not exactly subtle about driving past your apartment every night. My stomach dropped. What do you want? Just to deliver a message. His cold smile widened. Tell your boyfriend that Victor Marchetti says hello, and that the next time we meet, I won't be so friendly. Before I could respond, the black sedan pulled up beside us. The man stepped into the back seat without another word, and the car disappeared into traffic. I stood frozen on the sidewalk, my heart pounding, my phone clutched in my shaking hand. Then I called Dante. He arrived in 15 minutes, which meant he'd broken about a dozen traffic laws to get there. His face was a mask of controlled fury when he stepped out of the car, but his hands were gentle when they cupped my face. Are you hurt? No, he didn't touch me, just talked. What did he say? His gray eyes searched my face, cataloging every detail. Tell me exactly. I repeated the conversation word for word, watching his expression harden with every syllable. Get in the car, he said when I finished. We're going to the penthouse. Marco is already there. Dante, Elena. His voice softened slightly, but his eyes remained hard. Please, I need you somewhere safe while I handle this. I nodded, letting him guide me into the waiting car. As we drove through the city streets, his hand never left mine, gripping tight enough to be almost painful. At the penthouse, Marco was waiting with 2 other men I didn't recognize. They all had the same hard-eyed look, the same coiled tension in their frames. Tell me everything, Marco said as soon as we walked in. I repeated the story again, adding more details I'd remembered: the car's license plate, the man's accent, the exact words he'd used. Marco took notes, asked clarifying questions, his expression growing more grim with each answer. When I finished, Dante led me to the couch, pressing a glass of water into my hands. I hadn't realized how badly I was shaking until I saw the liquid trembling in the glass. "This is my fault," Dante said quietly, sitting beside me. "I should have been more careful, I should have." "Stop." I set down the glass and took his face in my hands, forcing him to look at me. "This is not your fault. You didn't ask for this. You didn't choose to have enemies. This is on them, not you." "But if I hadn't?" "If you hadn't what? Loved me?" I shook my head. "I'm not sorry you love me. I'm not sorry I chose to be with you. And I'm not going to let them win by blaming ourselves for their threats." He stared at me for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. Then he pulled me close, burying his face in my hair. "How are you so strong?" he murmured. "I'm not," I admitted. "I'm terrified, but I'm also furious. They don't get to take this from us. They don't get to win." Marco appeared beside us, his expression determined. "We're tripling your security detail. You don't go anywhere alone from now on. And we're going to find out who that man was and why Victor Marchetti thought this was an appropriate time to make contact." "What does this mean?" I asked. "The truce you mentioned, is it over?" The brothers exchanged a look. "We don't know yet," Dante said carefully. "It could be a test, could be a warning, could be the beginning of something bigger." "What do we do?" "We be smart, we be careful, and we wait." Dante's jaw tightened. "But Elena, if at any point this becomes too much, if you want out, I'll understand. I won't like it, but I'll understand." I looked at him, this powerful man who had walked through a rainstorm to get to me, who had spent 8 months in misery rather than push me into a world I wasn't ready for, who was now offering me an exit even though it would destroy him. "I'm not going anywhere," I said firmly. "We're in this together, all of it." Relief flooded his features, followed by a fierce protectiveness that made my breath catch. "Together," he agreed, pulling me close. "Whatever comes." The next few weeks were tense, but the expected escalation never came. Victor Marchetti went silent, his message delivered but not followed up. Dante's people dug into the encounter, trying to understand what it meant, but came up with nothing concrete. "It's a power play," Marco theorized during one of our now regular security briefings. "He wanted to show he could get to her. It's a message to Dante, not a threat to Elena specifically." "That doesn't make me feel better," Dante growled. "It should, actually." Marco leaned back in his chair. "If he wanted to hurt her, he would have. Instead, he's playing games. That means we have time." Time, a precious, uncertain commodity. We used it well. Dante started including me more in his legitimate business operations, real estate developments, restaurant investments, the charitable foundation his mother had started before her death. I met his lawyers, his accountants, the handful of people outside his family that he trusted completely. And slowly, the life I'd walked away from 8 months ago started to feel like mine again. Only this time, I wasn't on the edges. I was at the center, exactly where Dante had promised I would be. One evening, about 2 months after the encounter on the street, Dante took me to his family's estate outside the city. It was the first time I'd been there. A sprawling property with a main house, guest cottages, and gardens that went on forever. "This is where I grew up," he said as we walked through the grounds, my hand tucked safely in his. "Marco and I used to play in those woods for hours, drive our mother crazy with worry." "Tell me about her," I said softly. I knew his mother had died when he was in his 20s, but he rarely spoke about her. He was quiet for a moment, his thumb tracing circles on the back of my hand. "She was the heart of this family, the one who held everything together. When she died, it was like—" He stopped, swallowing. "Like the light went out. My father was never the same after. Neither was I." "I'm sorry," I said, leaning into his side. "I wish I could have known her." "She would have loved you." A small smile crossed his face. She always said I was too serious, too controlled, that I needed someone to make me laugh. He looked down at me. You make me laugh, Elena. You make me feel things I thought I'd forgotten how to feel. I stopped walking, turning to face him fully. In the golden evening light, he looked younger somehow, softer, less like the feared head of a powerful family and more like the man I'd fallen in love with. I love you, I said. The words came easily now, after 2 months of relearning what we'd nearly lost. I love every part of you, even the parts that scare me. He cupped my face in his hands, his gray eyes intense. Marry me. The words hung in the air between us, unexpected and perfect. What? I breathed. Marry me, he repeated, more certain now. I know it's fast. I know we've only been back together for 2 months. But Elena, I've known since the first night we met that you were it for me. I'm not going to find anything better than what we have. I don't want to, I want you. I want forever with you, I want. I kissed him, cutting off the rest of his words. When I pulled back, he was smiling. Is that a yes? Yes, I laughed, tears streaming down my face. Yes, of course, yes. He kissed me again, lifting me off my feet and spinning me around while the sun set over the estate and the future stretched out before us, uncertain but no longer frightening. So there you have it, my story, the accidental text that changed everything, the love that survived 8 months of silence, the choice to step into a dangerous world with eyes wide open. You might be wondering if I made the right choice, if loving someone like Dante, someone whose life is filled with shadows and secrets and very real threats, was worth it. And the truth is, I don't know what the future holds. The Marchettis are still out there. The truce is still fragile. Tomorrow could bring peace or chaos or something in between. But what I do know is this. I spent 8 months trying to live without him, and it was the loneliest time of my life. I had safety and normalcy and everything I thought I wanted, and none of it mattered because he wasn't there to share it with me. Some people are worth the risk. Some love is worth the danger. And for me, Dante Valentino is both. What would you have done in my place? Would you have sent him away that rainy night when he appeared at my door? Would you have chosen the safe path over the one that leads straight into uncertainty? Or would you have done what I did? Opened the door, let him in, and trusted that some things are more important than staying safe? I want to know what you think. Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I genuinely want to hear your perspective. And if you're still here, if you followed my journey from that panicked moment when I sent the wrong text to now, standing in his family's garden with a promise on my lips and a future in my heart, then you're invested in this story just like I am. Maybe you've been in a similar situation. Maybe you've had to choose between the life you thought you wanted and the person who makes you feel most alive. Whatever your story is, I'd love to hear it. And if mine resonated with you, if any part of it made you feel something, made you think about your own choices and chances, then hit that subscribe button, because this is just the beginning. Share this with someone who believes in second chances, someone who knows that love doesn't always make sense, doesn't always play it safe, doesn't always follow the rules. My name is Elena Russo, and this is the story of how an accidental text message led me straight into the arms of a mafia boss, and how I discovered that sometimes the most dangerous choice is also the most beautiful one. Thank you for listening, thank you for caring, and thank you for being part of this journey with me. Until next time, remember, some risks are worth taking, some people are worth waiting for, and some love stories are worth telling even when they don't come with guarantees. Especially then. The end, for now. Subscribe for part 2. The wedding they said would never happen, coming soon.